Warning, this broadcast is for mature audiences only. Do not attempt to perform similar stunts with your own FileMaker servers unless you're trying to get the attention of your boss. The server crashes in today's broadcast are performed by certified professionals. Do not attempt this at home. Viewer discretion is advised.
Man, it's always going to be a good day when you start with blowing stuff up. I like that very much. Everyone, welcome to fmtraining.tv, where we do awesome stuff. So I'm Richard Carlton, creator of fmtraining.tv. Today is an awesome Friday. Today is dedicated to the Marines. It's Larry and the Marine Corps. They were very insistent that I cover this topic. It's a good one to cover. We've covered it before, but like a lot of things in life, you have to repeat yourself because the first time you say it, no one hears it. In fact, even it's good for me. I see things, it's good to repeat them. Because if you don't repeat it, you don't have currency, as we say in the aviation business. If you're current, just because you flew a plane once doesn't mean you can fly it today. With any sort of competence, you have to kind of keep practicing, right? That's the way FileMaker is. It's a perishable skill set. Today we're talking about, it's an open Q&A day, so you can ask questions. I would request that since I'm here by myself, that you guys try to pretend to be nice to me and don't be too mean to me, because I'm a very sensitive individual. And as a result, try to keep the topics on topic, and I'm going to keep, when I look over here, if it looks like I'm looking over here, I'm looking at my other computer over here with a Discord conversation. So we want to keep the conversation there focused. So if you have questions, feel free to shoot them off. I will come back over. Today is recovery day, so we're talking about recovery. So let's talk about low-hanging obvious fruit. I'm going to state all this for everyone. If you don't know this, feel free to ask the question. So, and I'm starting down here. That way I don't have someone read ahead and then start talking about and asking questions on item 28. Because Kyle is my attention deficit disorder kid, and he's not here yet, but he will show up, and then he'll read to the bottom and ask me questions about stuff. Very frustrating. So, always run your database on a FileMaker Server, FileMaker Cloud. Do not use it on peer-to-peer. I have some very smart people that I love in this world who insist on using peer-to-peer because they're fundamentally very cheap people. And these are people with yachts and right? So how do you go from a person who has yachts and sports cars to a person who won't pay for FileMaker Server? Don't know. But if these people heard me, they'd probably be really mad at me. So maybe you won't identify yourselves as who you are. But I mean, I really love these people. I love them very much. I mean, all of you here today, I am only here because you are here. If most of you were bailing to, I've been like, screw it, I'm out of here. But I don't want to let you down. I want to make sure that you guys get good training and it's part of our growing community. And let people know about this community. It's good. So do not do peer-to-peer. That's where you go on FileMaker Pro and it shares with like 5 users, right? Don't use that, okay? Because there's no automatic backups that causes problems. Just take my word for it. If you want an explanation of why you should use server, we could spend 30 minutes on that. It's not a good use of our time at the moment. When you crash your FileMaker server, never use the crash files. I'm saying this again. Everyone here should be able to mantra if I'd done what Richard said, I would have saved $100,000 or some sort of shirt. That'd be a great shirt, right? Claris doesn't actually say this. This is one of those moments where we get into an area in here like, what should you do? What would Brian Boitano do, right? If I say, what would Brian Boitano do if he was here right now? And some of you are going, what the hell is he talking about, right? Well, if you don't know, that's fine. He was a famous skater, and that's a South Park reference. But they really should say, they always like this anyway, use FileMaker Server, but always roll to the last good backup. It's so important because the whole reason we're here today is because people don't do number 1 and number 2, right? So it's important to understand that number 3 happens. Claris will frequently default to using their FileMaker Server to when it starts up to automatically open the files that are in the database folder. When we set up servers, we always turn this off. Please, 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 if you're here, turn this checkbox off. It's a checkbox that's in your FileMaker Server console. If you want to know where that's at, I'm not going to get into it. Once again, it's not about how to build your FileMaker Server. We have videos on that. Would you like to know where to get the videos? Funny you asked that question. Let's talk about that real quick because we haven't talked about that, right? So if I go to fmtraining.tv and you want to, of course, I have to spell it correctly, which would be really swell. this is the website, and you can come over here to the individual courses. We don't sell individual courses anymore because we have too many courses. We are so awesome. We have so many topics. We just put it all in a bundle. So pick a bundle you want. Do you want a bundle with FileMaker and a couple extra stuff, or do you want just the video only bundle? Pick one, buy it, help support the channel. So in this training, we talk about and we show you how to set up a Linux server, how to set up a Mac server, how to set up a Windows server. And so it's all covered in there already. So this topic's covered, but this is open Q&A. So I'm looking over here, question. So we've got to this point right here. Jericho right here just made the point. Jericho says, this is one of the live stream people. You think I make this up, folks? I don't make this up. Jericho goes, the IT department at his company, parentheses, they don't know crap about FileMaker, close parentheses. I'm pretty sure I can say that. Rebooted my FileMaker server last night, and when it came up, my files were not available. That way I knew that I had to use my last good backup. Jericho 1, thank you. If you turn off the feature, and then someone kicks the cord out of your FileMaker server, and then they go, oh, beep, and they plug it back in. They pretend, and they tiptoe off. I used to have janitors that would do this. We couldn't figure out why the servers would go off at 2 in the morning. The janitors would plug in into the battery backup that ran the servers. They would vacuum. Then they would shut off all the servers. And then they would press a button and reset it and then vacuum off a different port. And then they would sneak out of the building and no one would know. And the servers would come back up, but the files wouldn't auto start. If the files don't auto start, you know something crashed. You roll the last good backup. Hello?
Hi.
Hey, is this TK?
Yeah, this is TK.
Okay, cool, TK. So TK is live from Germany, right, TK?
Yes, that's right.
You have been promoted. Welcome to Friday. So you are here. When you have a question, you can interrupt me. I'm totally good with that, okay?
Okay.
So, all right, so here's the deal. If you violate these rules, you're here at this broadcast today. So all the small code people, right? Someday you're going to be senior engineers. You're going to know stuff about FileMaker Server. You're dealing with your customers. Please don't have your customers use crash files, okay? If you use a crash file, the file doesn't close down properly. That's the problem. You don't run the files locally and then force quit them. Like, I'm over here using the Larry file over here, and then my FileMaker crashes, or someone kicks the cord out of the computer and there's no battery, or the power goes off, and then I've had engineers do this. The power goes off, they keep working. No internet, but they keep working. And they have a local file, and they they keep working until their battery backup goes dead. The battery backup is there to help you close gracefully before you lose power, right? So, if after 31 years, if it's done, very rarely do I see something new and amazingly stupid. I've seen it all before, mostly. So what happens is that if you have a file, so let's talk about this realistically. You have a FileMaker file, and how do you know it's corrupted? How do you know there's a problem? One of two things happens. Either the file acts weird, and weird is a very broad term, or you run a recovery on it and it says, things are a little funky, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to come over here to FileMaker, and and we're not gonna make fun of, Larry's file is actually just fine for those of you wondering about this. Larry was like, I don't wanna show you my file. It's not up to Nick's standards. I said, no one is Nick's standards. Nick is a freaking weirdo. No, our internal systems look half of them are okay, and the other half that are older, like 20 years old, look like they're 20 years old, right? So I'm going to go into FileMaker. I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is so Larry comes to me out of the blue, and he goes, well, I'm a little bit OCD. I'm filling in the blanks here. So Larry, if it's not correct, just feel free to ignore me on that. And I ran this recover, and what you can do is say select, and then this is the recover command. So we saw that under file, the file cannot be running when you run the recover command. And so you have to have a local copy of it. You can't access it off the server. So you have to get it off the server, run it locally. It will leave the original file, and it will make a copy that is quote unquote the recovered file. Initially, we don't care about the file. We want the telemetry. It's like when you shoot the space shuttle or the rocket or whatever you're going to shoot, the rockets from the new big rocket they're shooting, Elon Musk, and they get all this telemetry back. We need the telemetry to tell us what's going on. Now I can go to use advanced options. I'm going to come over here and basically I'm going to turn on all the advanced stuff right here. If you see this, it's fine. The defaults are fine. I'm going to say recovered. I'm going to say just test. And so it's going to create a file on my computer. It's running through this analysis. Then it's going to come up with a summary. So right now it's fixing, or it's looking at the file, attempting to fix it, and it's writing a log file of everything that it sees. It's writing a log of everything it sees in the file at all, whether it's good or bad. Okay. Then it comes back and it gives you this little message right here. And I don't know if you folks can see this. I can't really zoom in on it too much. Let me take a screenshot and make it bigger for you. This is your message right here. Problems were detected. So if you're slightly OCD or you don't know what this means, it means panic time. Ah! My investment's going to go away. Because here's the thing. This is saying there are problems in here, and this gives us a summary of the problem. We'll talk about that in a second, but understand why there's a panic here. The panic is in here because if there's enough damage, the file will someday not open at all. It won't even open. You double click, it says it cannot open. Ellen, the lobster, sent me a file here a little bit, like Monday or Tuesday, and it was like beyond damage. It's like super trashed. And it won't even open, and the recovery can't fix it. So it's totaled. Literally like you crashed a car and totaled it, okay? So you don't want to have that. But you see this, and you don't know, is this message right here telling me that my car is on fire and I'm about to die, or is it like not a serious problem? That's what today's conversation is about, how understanding the severity of what you're looking at. So first off, if everything we're doing today is unnecessary, for the most part, if you run the database on a server and you restore from the last backup, you will have this problem once every 5 or 10. You will have forgotten this conversation by the time you have a problem, okay? It is possible that you do everything right and you can get little problems. Now, let me just help you out real quick. Let's talk about severity. This screen right here shows a very minor set of issues, most likely, okay? Mostly because the counts are low. Zero drop blocks. So there's a slog file in here that's a mile long. This is a summary it should say summary of what's transpired, okay? The schema, it modified 0 things. Everything was mostly fine. It found 11 things and modified them, and then it rebuilt the indexes. And so this is a minor, this is like a tail light out on your car or something, or maybe a headlight goes out. It's not where we talked about the other day of driving drunk blindfolded and you snap roll the car. One of my friends, Chris Moyer, years ago, fell asleep at the wheel. Not only did he fall asleep at the wheel going down the freeway, he fell asleep in such a way that his foot pressed down on the accelerator and held it there. And so he went off the road, through a ditch, launched through the air like the Dukes of Hazzard, like some sort of TV show from the 80s, flies through the air, rolls it in the air, hits the ground, and it's still going and stuff, and then it explodes and crashes. And he was in traction. They rebuilt him like the $6 million FileMaker developer. One of the smartest FileMaker people I know in the world, period. It's not even close. And they rebuilt him like the $6 million man. I'm sure he's got pins and stuff all in his body. And I always he's probably sensitive to it, but anytime you can walk away from a crash like that's pretty damn impressive. So that is not this. If your FileMaker, so odds are if you crash your FileMaker file once and you reuse it, it might look like this. I'm saying most likely. If your IT group crashes your FileMaker server behind Jericho's back and does it every day, once a week for a year, 52 crashes, then these numbers are going to go up. It'll say 383 items. I've seen it before when you start to get to a file that won't open at all or run at all. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items in here, if not 1,000 items rebuilt and all this sort of stuff. And then you're talking like severe damage. So why does that matter? So Claris's official policy is that whenever you recover a file, you never use the recovered file. And you're like, well, so most people go, if I had a good backup, this is the conversation. I know, so we go to TK, we say, TK, you should back up the file. Yes, I know, I will back up the file, I'm a good stormtrooper. Right, so it's all good. And then he doesn't do it. I'm like, the database is really big, I'll back up once a day. And then it's like 8 hours of lost work, I'll just use the backup crash file. So you get this progressive damage that goes into the file, progressively damaged, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and eventually you have a serious problem. So, so let's talk about the types of damage. So we know that there's severity of damage where very, very severe, the file won't open. So that's what we really want to avoid that. Less severe damage, either you don't even know it's there, or the file does something weird. I said weird before was a very loose term. Weird is like, I went through a layout and printed it and it crashes. That historically is a dead giveaway. You've got a problem, okay? With an object on the layout. I've actually had it where in a database, if I would flip through records, it was flip, 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 everything's fast, and I hit one record and it's 3 minutes for it to render and it's not running a backup, it's on the server, it's not running a backup. It's like, why is it taking 3 minutes to display this data? The data was damaged. So what are the areas that you have damage? You can have damage to the structure, the schema, layout mode, relationships, scripts, layout objects, things like that. Data damage, which is the stuff that in browse mode or you import. And then a subset of data damage is index damage. Okay, so index damage is where, remember we talk about indexes. I'm not going to tell you what an index is. If you don't know what it is, go watch the paid training on indexes. We cover that in great detail. Then there are structural defects. Okay, a structural defect is a defect in the file where the engineers at Claris accidentally create an area. For example, years ago, they had a bug where you would delete a container and it would delete the record, but the container object was, this is before external containers, so everything was internal. I had, like, if you go to some of my database, I can still find icons from 1992 that I had put in there at the time. I thought Calvin and Hobbes were really great. I put them in there and I deleted those records. Calvin and Hobbes is still permanently in my file because Claris had this structural defect where they would delete the record, but they didn't delete the object, and they don't know how to fix it. It's like one of those, like you've trapped yourself in the corner. You painted yourself into a corner. Like if you're painting the floor and painting the walls, and you paint and you keep backing up, and then you hit the wall and you have nowhere to go. You're trapped. They've trapped themselves, and it's easier for them just to kind of wall off that little area and just leave it in the file. You're like, well, it makes the file bigger. Yeah, your file might be bigger, a couple hundred K or even a megabyte if this happened to you, okay? And there's no way to fix it. The only way to fix structural damage is to throw the file away and start from scratch. Structural or data damage we can fix. In fact, that's what we're talking about.
No questions so far.
No questions so far. Okay, so.
Yeah, but on the YouTube, the Twaha, or how do you call him? Twaha Rani?
Twaha, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he mentioned something which is, I think it's good. Always back up with verification on. Yeah.
Well, okay, so we could talk about, I don't want to get into that. Can we save that for a server day? I would not always back up with verification on, because your backups go from, if you have a big database, you could go from a 2 or 3 minute backup to a 90-minute backup, right? So that could be a problem for you.
Yeah.
So if you want to do verification, assuming your version of server supports that, then you would do that late at night, like once a week or once a night at 2 in the morning or something. Just understand it could take an hour or more to run that backup. So just keep that in mind. Clone once weekly. Okay, yeah, I don't want to, it's not about that. It's not about all the ways of trying to mitigate this. We're assuming that you are a bad person and you're a bad person and you have damage in a file, okay? This is not about how to, listen, we talk about this at great length, everyone, about, having extra copies and all this sort of stuff. So what Claris likes to say in their blanket statement is, if your file comes back, this message will come back one of two ways. It'll look like this with some level of damage down here, or they'll say, no problems were detected. No problems were detected. The file seems safe to use. So Claire says, if you see that, use the file. If you see that, and their generic answer, and you've seen this repeated by the folks at Soliant and other places, because they kind of repeat the mantra, but it's not necessarily the most common sense, is that if you see anything in the database like this, never use the recovered file. Because in the old days, back in FileMaker 6, if you did a recovery and FileMaker saw something wrong, it might start chopping things out of the system, like it would chop out some scripts if they thought the scripts were damaged. I have never seen that these days. I have not seen that in the last 15 years. And we do a lot of databases. So what you do see is one of two things. Either you have light damage like this, or you have heavy duty damage where you've got a lot of items. So here's my suggestion, and this is what I do. And this is different than Claire's, because remember, Claire's recommendations are written by a legal team who's trying to minimize the lawsuits that are coming in, not necessarily for your best benefit. Because Claire's would always say, oh, if you have anything wrong here, go to the last good backup, even if it's a month old, and just use that, and you're screwed. Okay, on what planet is that ever going to be acceptable, right? On what I had a gentleman, Calvin, one of Calvin's customers, and they had huge investment, $100,000 company, and they started getting messages on here like this, and it turns out they're very much similar to Larry, a little bit worse than Larry's file, but not much. It was very, and so they had like 80 or 90 or 120 items or whatever it was. It was quite a few, and I'm like, eh. So what you want to do is, here's the thing. If the file is lightly damaged, the recovery will fix the file. It will fix the file, or it will fix a lot of the things in the file. Okay. If the file is heavily damaged, where you have like 1,000 items in here and there's like huge numbers and all this sort of damage, the file is shot. You really need to think about the backup. You cannot patch that file. I mean, where I say it's reasonable, right, to fix it, for smaller, maybe even mid-sized things, this is from Larry's file. This is nothing. This is nothing. So what I do is you take the file down, you run a recovery, you see what you do. Okay. Now, just for giggles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say open the log file. Let's talk about the log file real quick. I'm going to open all this up. Here's the deal: is that you've got all these zeros in here. The zeros mean that everything was fine and it didn't do anything, right? And what happens along the way is that you'll get some other areas like where it's a 1 or a 2 or something like that in there, and that is where some work has been done. FileMaker has made some adjustment. The recovery command is not just telling you that there's an issue. It actually tries to fix it and remediate the issue. Okay, and so you're looking through here for some 1s, right? But the idea that this is if we were trying to go back and fix it. We'll get to this. We have time to. We'll get to this question. We'll get to this. But initially, you're going to run the recovery once. Look at this. Understand that you have a small problem, a medium problem, or the file is seriously wrecked. This is a lightly damaged file, if it's really damaged at all. Okay. Sometimes I think that it does clean up on it, and it's not really a serious issue. And so what I did before is so let's go ahead and run this sequence. I'm going to run through the sequence. We're going to do this all in real time. So here is, so when we did this before, hello, there we go, little delay. Okay, so this is the file I started with. This is the recovery. You want to keep all these. So this is what I'm going to call recovery 1. Okay, so I'm on recovery 1 right here. This is the first recovered file. Okay, now I can open and use both files. Both these files can be opened and used. Now, the thing is that this file we knew had that punch list of damaged. However, the recovery process made some repairs. It did some repairs. It did them. And then it put them in over here. See, this log file over here doesn't really tell you this is the condition before and this is the condition after. It only tells you the condition before. Does that make sense? It's like the mechanic. Your car crashes, you take it to the mechanic, and they give you a punch of all the things that's broken. Then they go off and fix it. Then they put it in a semi-truck and you can't see it and they give it back to you. And you're like, well, how is the car now? And the mechanic goes, I don't know. We worked on it. Here's the car. So you don't know the condition. It'll open, but you really don't know. So the recovery gives you like the beforehand damage report, right? So we need a after the fact damage report, right? So what we want to do is I run the recovery a second time. On the recovered file, recovery of the recovery. Oh, you can't do it. Listen, if this was FileMaker 6, this might be a bad idea. This is FileMaker 19. This works just fine. Trust me on this, right? So what ends up happening is that what we're going to do is we're going to go over to FileMaker. We're going to say, I want to run the recovery again. I want to run it on the second file. And what this is going to do is I'm going to basically compare the messages from the first time to the second time and see what the recovery couldn't fix. If the recovery can fix some things and some minor stuff, then it'll come back, it'll fix that, and then we'll be down to the things that it can't really fix that we have to fix, okay? So the other day, Calvin came back to me and goes, this file's got all this damage, and we don't know where to start. It was like 150 items. I said, run and recover. Then recover the recovered file, and that will give you a punch list of what it couldn't fix. Well, he runs it the second time. It goes from 150 items to 8 items or 12 items. And so there's 12 items in there that have to be manually repaired. We'll talk about that. Well, 12 items to manually repair is much more manageable than 150 items, right? Wouldn't you say? Right? So that is kind of the idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a recovery on, hang on, I'm going to clear this for a second. This should be, I misnamed this. I just want to keep it straight here. Recovered 1. So this is the first recovery, okay? And the idea would be is that to get a punch list of the things that really Claris can't fix automatically, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and run the recovery here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to say run the recover. I'm going to start it on recovered 1. I'm going to say select. The advanced options are enabled. These are the standard advanced options. I'm going to have it go. I'm going to call it recovered 2 on the desktop. And then as I do this, I'm going to look over here. Here's the second screenshot. Okay. Now I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to close this. So really there is recovered 2. And I have a screenshot of what came out. It was kind of like the condition of this file, right? And this one tells me the condition of this file right here, right, realistically. And so here's the first one. It said, oh yeah, I got like 11 items and whatever, right? And so whatever, basically after the second time, whatever I run it, these are things that couldn't fix. And so what you have here, really interesting on this one, and this is one possibility, it fixed everything for Larry. There's nothing wrong with the file at this point per what FileMaker can tell. If the FileMaker file is still crashing or misbehaving or something like that, we could talk about that. But strictly speaking, this should give you a lot of food for thought, right? Because these issues over here, I'd have to go back and look at them. They might have been an index issue. They could have been other non-volatile, really dangerous issues. Who knows? But the recovery command took care of them. So Larry is in a panic about nothing, but we didn't know that. Now, if you still had some items that were damaged over here, the next thing I would do is run a clone. And what does a clone do? Clone is a very, I'm talking to the camera, but none of you can see me. A clone is a very therapeutic process that strips all the user data out of the file and does a bunch of resetting of the file, like resets the switches, it resets the internal keys, it does all sorts of really good therapeutic things. If there was a lot of damage in here and I really needed to use this file or wanted to use this file, I'd run a double recover. And then on the second file, I would run a clone of that to get all the data and reset it. Then I would run the recover again. So as you're doing this, you're like, we started here at the top and you're working your way down. You can put them in folders or whatever. And you have this like telemetry along the way. So the next thing you might do is we would go and open up this one right here. I'm going to say it's Larry is the name. There's no password. This is really great little file right here he's got. It looks pretty sharp. Nothing wrong with this file. And then I would say save a copy. Where's that at? Save a copy right here. And you're going to save a clone. There we go. So there's the clone. And what I would do is I would say clone 1, okay? And so what that's going to do, it's going to run another fairly therapeutic process on this file. And did it do it already? Okay, I'm going to move myself over here. I'm going to flip myself. Now I'm backwards. Okay, so here's the clone. So this is in the sequence of us building files, top to bottom, right? And it looks better. It makes it look on the screen. Okay, maybe I should leave myself over here from now on. So now you have this clone. Now technically, if you look at the clone file, so this 9 megabytes and this one right here, come on, is 40 megabytes. So it stripped a lot of data out of it, right? But the cloning is very therapeutic. Then what you could do is you could run a recover against the clone to see if that remediated some issues, right? And so the idea is that you get down to a point where you have the data and the schema together and it's okay. Or you have the clone of the file and it's okay. And then you can do a re-import using the data migration tool, which is another set of videos in our paid video training course, how to do a bulk movement from file A to file B with a couple, it's very fast, very quick, like 90 seconds and you're done. Pretty cool. So there you go. So you've got this process that you follow down. At some point you will stop. Now here's the next thing. Let's pretend, for example, that we got done and we're up here, and say that after 2 or 3, we did a couple recovers and a clone, and we still have, you have a handful of issues. Here's what you have to do. You're gonna open that file. You're gonna find those items. Now this is what I put some sample. TK, if you want to copy and paste those links around a little bit into the couple forums. Michaela at Soliant calls it doing surgery in your file, but basically that's a good analogy. Of course, she says never never use the recovered file, which is nonsense. Okay, what you want to do is, if you have a lightly damaged file and it can recover and it fixes most of the issues, but if you have one with thousands of things on it, the recovery can't fix it. Okay, it's never going to fix it good enough. So the idea is that you're down to a handful of issues. Say that says that these certain objects on the layout are damaged, or this field is damaged. You have to go into your file, delete those items. Right? I'm assuming we want to get, the goal is to get it down to a message that says it's great. Okay, so that's kind of like our goal. Okay, we have a goal, and the log file will tell us. Remember, it said it would give you the issue, and 0 was okay, 0 was fine, but you're looking for a number that's like a 1. And when you get that error message, it's the item right above it. It's the one that has to be fixed, right? And so you delete it. If it's a custom menu, that would suck because you'd have to delete the custom menu. If it was a field that was used as a key in a lot of places, that would suck. But you have to delete these. Okay, you have to delete them. You cannot copy them and replace them from another file, because some of these links, people go, well, we're not really sure where the corruption will come over. Yes, it does. If you have a corrupted object or item on another file and you bring it over, the corruption comes with it. Take it to the bank. I know this. And so you have to recreate it. So if you delete a field and you want the field in your system, if you delete it and you don't need it because it's an old piece of field, delete it, it's gone, right? But the idea is that you remove these things, then you run your recover, then you run the recover again, and you're like, I'm down to 1 item, fix that 1 item. Or it looks like this. Now you have removed the items from your file, the handful of items, you did your surgery to remove them. Now you have to build them back in. Do not copy and paste them. I mean, if you want to try, you can, but then what you're likely going to run into is that magically it won't pass the recovery test anymore without having a corrupted item, right? So once again, we're trying to surgically remove the items that the recovery cannot fix, and that is for databases that have minor damage. Once again, the numbers are very small. I'm repeating this over and over again. If you have, 217 invalid blocks and 485 items and 3,000 things here, that file's a throwaway. You cannot fix it, right? There's too much damage in there, and you shouldn't try, okay? You should go to the backup, right? So David Angel, what number is surpassing the tolerable damage? You're looking for listen, you'll know it when you see it. It's like that line, people go, what's the definition of pornography? And everyone's like looking around trying to figure out what that is. Well, we can't really define it, but you'll know it when you see it. That is what you'll see here. When you see 23, or like Calvin called me and he had like 150 or 200 items. It was a little on the high side, but we ran the recovery through it and it chewed it down to like a dozen or something, a manageable number, right? And that was the parts that the recovery could not fix. It didn't know how to fix it, right? Because a lot of things it can fix on its own. And so then we did the clone. I think they did the clone action on it. And I don't know if that helped them at all. But you get it down to like this real small number. Then you delete the items. You run the recovery. You verify it gone to 0. Then you build the pieces back in. We run this periodically through starting point. Most of the time, very rarely do we have a problem. But we don't do a lot of surgery on starting point. But it's possible. And we would do this process if we had to. In fact, we had to do this process back with starting point 5 or 6, and because I had this guy in Las Vegas who decided to define 4 fields, and I don't know what the hell he used to define the fields, but when he defined 4 fields in our preferences, they turned out to be 4 corrupted fields. And as soon as I deleted those fields and then ran the recovery again, out came a clean file. And the reason I know this is because someone downloaded our file and they ran the recovery on it to get the telemetry. It was almost like someone who was like trying to, I'm going to get you, Richard. You're giving away free software. You can't do that. I'm going to embarrass you. And of course, I was embarrassed appropriately. So I'm like, right? So we cleaned it. And then so we make sure we do that before it ships. Doesn't mean you can't find one out there that's like that. It just means that it's another tool in the tool chest. No. So let's talk about this from
Agent Chevy has a question.
Yeah, can we export all the records from a damaged file and report it into a good copy? Yes, that's what you would do. You would create so first off, you're not going to delete anything. You're going to kind of keep a sequential set of folders or something as you build your process. Start here and then down. Eventually you get to the good replacement file somewhere down here or maybe up here. For Larry, it was 2 recovers and he was good. So this file right here, the second recovery, is totally good. No explicit intervention required. He's done. So say you have a clone. And then you do a recovery, you're down to 3 items. Then you delete those 3 items, then you do a recovery again, and it passes. Got it. Okay, so you have data up here that we think is probably okay, and then we have the clone down here, which we know is okay. So then you're going to use the data migration tool, which is the bulk data mover. Okay, now, if there is corruption in the data, that bulk data mover will move the corruption. So after you get done with that, you're going to run the recover again to see if any new problems popped up. If new problems popped up, you've got a problem in the data. So so TK, remind me to explain how to clean the data. But for the moment, let's just assume that sample file. So if I go here to my training real quick, people want to know, well, how do I move the file? Right? So how do you move the data in bulk? It's called the data migration tool. We spent about an hour and a half providing training on it. If you pop up our training file, as soon as it finishes, whenever it updates, these things update automatically every 2 weeks when you pop them open. So you go down here to the FileMaker Platform 19 course, 2021-19 right here. And you would go down here to the topics, and you're looking for, I don't know if it's a data migration tool on or enemy integration, certification, data migration. It has its own section. I am so smart. I mean that flippantly, because the year before it was in its own little miscellaneous. Anyway, even the book, it's almost got its own section. So the data migration, this is everything about the DMT data migration tool. You need to watch these videos. That's how to move the data from data from file A to a good structure on file B. Watch this training right here. If you don't have the training, go to fmtraining.tv, buy the training. Because this right here is a whole 2 or 3 day conversation if we were doing it live. Okay, but that's how you would do that. Now, let's say that you do that and you run the recovery again, and suddenly where you had a really clean structural clone down here, you do the data migration or you run an import command, whatever you want to do, and now you have a damage is back in it. Okay, so that means that the damage is in a record or more than one record in one or more tables. How do you clean the data in FileMaker? This is kind of an aggravating thing. There's no automated process for it. So I'm going to go and open up Larry's file again just to use this as an example. This is how you clean data, okay? So this is Larry's file. By the way, Larry works in Major League Baseball. So he's a Marine that moved up to Major League Baseball. He's a scouting agent, I understand, for the Cardinals. So that's pretty awesome. So if you can throw a really good fastball, talk to Larry, he might get you on a team somewhere, or at least a AAA ball. I'm impressed. Anyway, so this is his database. So let's say that I'm going to go to field definitions. I'm going to use keyboard shortcuts, Command-Shift-D. I'm going to go into here. I've never looked at this. I have no idea what this looks like. Should we look at his relationship graph? Should we, Larry? Should we look at it? Okay, so that's too broad, but he's starting to do anchor buoy over here, right? See that? Anchor buoy. Then he's got this one big-ass anchor, but it's pretty well organized. See that? And then there's another anchor over here. This is probably, I will give this a B-. These are really good down here. See, those are going to be really fast. Sorry, I'm off topic. And then he built this one right here, which is just going to be slow, but pretty good, Larry. You get a gold star for that. So for a Marine, that was damn impressive. So anyway, so let's say that we have the anthem singers, like Roseanne Barr is a singer. That one time she butchered the Star Spangled Banner and then spit on the home plate or whatever she did. And so you have 283 records in here. So what we would do is we would need to go to the anthem singers or wherever. Actually, we have a games list right here. We have 72 records. Let's just say it's in this table right here. What you have to do is you have to go to export. You have to export these records, and you really can't save them as a FileMaker file because that can preserve the corruption. You need to actually have a tab or comma delimited file format. You call it games.tab or whatever we're doing here. And you're going to save it to the desktop. You're going to move, you're going to go to layout, you're going to go to table, grab all the fields, move them all over, and then you're going to do an export. And what this does is it strips it out of any FileMaker formatting, any corruption that'd be around it, and literally gives you just the pure, I should be able to open that up in text editor or something. Anyway, this looks like just an ugly text file. And like a value list, it actually is exactly what that is. Open it with my text app. That's what happens when I keep updating my computers with newer stuff. Oh, there we go. So this is it. So any XML, CSS, or any other stupid stuff in here would have been stripped out. Then you take that file there, and import it. And you have to do that for these tables. That cleans the corruption out of the record as a general rule, okay? So pretty good. That's a question. So that's how you do that. So Tawab brings up an interesting point. It's more of a maintenance item for a file is running a compacted copy on it. It helps clean some things up and whatnot. If you want to throw that into your list of things you can try as you're building these files, trying to get down to a manageable recovered file. If you want to run a recovery, you can. I'm going to go back over here to this file. You can go File, save a copy as. Now I do clone is super therapeutic, and it really deletes everything out of it. Like, for example, if you go and hit delete records, find all records in every table and delete all, that is not anywhere as good as what this is. This thing right here is almost instantaneous, and it does a lot of therapeutic. It like sends someone to the massage retreat for 2 weeks and fixes all their muscles and stretches them out and limbers them up and all that kind of stuff. This is really a good therapeutic thing right here. Compacted file can be useful. When I'm trying to when I have file damage, I don't tend to try to use that because it doesn't seem to affect the fixing of the items that I run into. Your mileage may vary, but compacted is kind of somewhat useful. Normally I use clone and recovered are the two that I primarily use. And start with recovered because you need that telemetry. Even if you're not going to use these files right here, and you're going to follow Claris's rules on just run this once, and then that's your damage list. That right here and then the log file here, super valuable to chase that down, right? But the reality is, if you have a lightly damaged file and the recovery can fix it, there's no point in torturing yourself unless you're just trying to get more billable hours for your customer. Hey, we're going to fix all this. It'll take me an extra week. Like, that's never a conversation you want to have with a customer. Okay.
David has another question. Should you export or import all your data from all tables, or is it just enough with the reported ones?
Well, okay, so when you run the data migration tool, it's a one process that sucks across all the tables, right? That's what I would use to bring everything over. If you determine you have data corruption in a table, the log will tell you which table has the problem. Then you would clean that one table. You dump it out, then bring it back in, that one table. You don't have to do all the tables. Just do the tables that are identified in the log. It'll be probably certain records within a table, to be honest with you, but this is the official process for cleaning that. So from a structural long-term perspective, someday, and I'm going to use my little air quotes here, someday, Claris has been working on this add-on technology and basically its ability to render out a FileMaker file in perfect fidelity. We talk about it in the book. My understanding the book was submitted again. I don't know if it was accepted. If it's accepted, you'll be able to order it next week probably. But I talked to Claris about this. You know, they're really hard to talk to. You call them on the phone and you have to beg and plead and cry and whine, and then they might acknowledge that you're a breathing human individual. And so I've kind of, but one part of this was that back in FileMaker 17, they promised, hey, we're going to give you the ability to export an XML file out that will perfectly, in perfect fidelity, give you all the code that allows you to then rebuild it. So it's very much like a Star Trek transporter. The idea is that when you beam someone from point A to point B, and anymore, this is apparently real tech. IBM prototyped it, and it magically disappeared behind the Department of Defense. This is about 15 years ago. They beamed the molecules from point A to point B, and whoop, it all disappeared. It was nationalized after that. So I don't know what the status of the beaming technology is, other than it is somewhat to a degree real. But you take something, you break it down, and you shoot the molecules across the point to another location, then you reconstruct it. So that's what we're talking about. So if you could export a FileMaker file completely with complete fidelity, and add-ons are kind of like that, but not really, then you could look at the file in a text editor and look for corruption. You could see where it suddenly had garbage characters and stuff. And so you could actually clean it that way, or buy a third-party tool that would look at that XML and go, hey, this is bad, what do you want to do? You want to fix it? You want to delete it? Whatever. And so the way we do this right now will probably still be the way we do this for a couple of years. At some point in the future, I would expect Claris to finalize that technology and make it available to us. Right now, when you export things out of FileMaker to make an add-on, you can kind of create a layout and kind of create a script and maybe a relationship, some fields and stuff like that. But a complete FileMaker solution includes privileges and security, things like that. I talked to Claris. The only thing that they did contribute to the book after, frankly, I threatened to make it up if they didn't give me some information. I said, I'm just going to make it up. And they were like, oh, we'll tell you. So they basically said, well, we're putting all our effort into add-on modules. We're just putting more effort into that. But as we invest in that area, we're learning about how to fix it so we can export the whole file. So it's like if you're Star Trek can sufficiently beam an arm off and give it to someone, or copy your arm and give it to someone. So you could attach a third arm to the top of your head and it's sticking out there, or like that, right? Or a next eyeball, or whatever you want to do. But when they try to beam a whole person, it kills them right now. So that's not good. So that's what add-ons are. Add-ons are this add-on. It's not the whole body, right? We follow that? Yes? So
Agent Chevy has a more general question about if you export your data to a format other than FileMaker, what about the container files?
Well, if they're external, which they should be, then I wouldn't worry about it, because an externally corrupted image won't be inside FileMaker, so it's not a problem. I've never actually had a container be a problem if it was external and we were running into this issue. The problems kind of seem to go away on that. I guess you could have a reference that would be corrupted and then it doesn't attach to the image. But listen, at the end of the day, if you really get a record that's damaged, you might just have to delete the record and eject it, including whatever images are attached to it. So if you have a bad record, like I said, I had that one deal years ago. The common things was that you print a layout and FileMaker crashes. You print other layouts, they don't crash. You print this layout, it crashes. There's an object on the layout that's corrupted. So you have to go to layout mode. You duplicate the layout, you print it, crashes, got it. Then you remove half the objects on the layout and you try to print it again. Does it crash? Doesn't crash. Okay, so one of the objects you deleted is the bad item. So then you kind of like process of elimination figure that out. Now the recovery command with that log should tell you which item is causing the problem. But in the old days before we had the log, we would kind of brute force it, right? So, but I did have records that would get damaged, very rarely, but they were absolutely obvious. When I deleted the record, I would take a screenshot of the data or whatever I would do. And then it was like a contact record and a couple, maybe even an invoice. And I would delete it, and then I would put it back. I would manually re-enter it after it was deleted, and it would resolve the problem. So hopefully that answers the question on that. I've always stored the containers externally. I made a mistake early on in development career where I added a ton of PDFs into a file, slowed down the file. Yeah, so yeah, once again, saving your digital documents externally is a very important thing to do. Otherwise, you will run into performance problems. Agent Chevy, we'll catch you guys. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, if you're really deeply concerned about this broadcast and want to file an official complaint, send the email to support@rcconsulting.com and we will take a look at it. All right, everyone, that's it for now. Thank you, TK. You are an awesome kind of guy. I really appreciate it. All right?
Always happy to help.
Awesome. Have a good one. Thanks, folks.
Okay. Bye.
And the guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected. The quarterback, great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Try to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.